Hey, Kira.
Hey, Layla.
I'm still echoing. Okay. We tried to mute the TV and it didn't work.
Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for joining us. We're letting folks, I think we got a couple others that are filtering in and we'll officially get started. Well, again, thank you guys for joining us as we are embarking on kind of a new phase in our Digging In webinar series. Stacy and I started this back in 2020 when we were all trying to figure out how to do virtual PD. And we thought that, as we have evolved into the TPS Southern Region, that we would bring it back as a way to continue, one, to share lesson ideas and tips, resources for classroom use, but then also as a way to kind of highlight some of the work happening in the TPS Southern Region and some of the work that's being done by some of the consortium members in the Southern Region. So again, thank you guys for joining us. And as we get started here, we are going to do just a couple quick housekeeping tips. One, as many of you guys know, we do record these, so please keep your mics muted if you are not asking questions or responding to questions. For those of you who are joining us live, please be sure to rename yourself so that we see your first and last name. And for those of you joining us live, we do like to make our webinars as interactive as possible, so feel free to introduce yourself as we are going through. Ask questions. We will have a couple people monitoring the chat and responding to those. So that's kind of a little extra incentive to join us live, is because we do like to make them as lively and interactive as we can. The other thing that we are doing that's a little different from how we did our Digging In series before. Those of you who are familiar with the old form know that we used to have a Padlet where we posted the videos, our monthly newsletters, slideshows, any resources that we talked about within any episode. Well, we've decided to kind of switch that over a little bit, and we're going to be actually placing all that material now on the TPS Teachers Network. And so I've got a link here to the public album where this will all be posted. And there's a QR code that will also get you to that public album. You do not have to have an account on the TPS Teachers Network to access that, although we do encourage you to create an account so that you can interact with us there through the TPS Southern Region group on the network, as well as to have access to the other wonderful materials available from the TPS Consortium through that site. So that's all I have for housekeeping. So I'm going to turn things over to Stacy, who's going to kind of kick us off with talking about what our focus is for this month.
Thanks, Kira. We are working our way through some technology. So if you can't hear us, just give it a minute. Thanks everybody for showing up. I know that thank you. I appreciate that. That really helps. Apparently there are new reaction buttons that do different things that you can play with. If you have questions, you can raise hands. The person presenting might not be able to see all that, but we have other people who are watching the chat who will be interacting as well. But you can also just feel free to, if we pause, unmute yourself and join the conversation, because sometimes we might ask questions of you. You can write those in the chat, or you can, go ahead and talk. We are trying out a new newsletter format for our Southern Region program. Some of you I know have been with us through our old newsletter format, and some of you are new to us as the Southern Region. So I'm just going to show you very quickly some of the stuff that we used to do and kind of how we're changing it now. And we really want to know if you have any suggestions for what we can do to make our TPS Southern Region newsletter more useful and more engaging. So I'm going to share, which one of these screens? This screen? I believe this screen. Yes, this screen. So okay, this is our latest issue of our newsletter, and one of the reasons why we decided to relaunch the Digging In webinar series is, well, partly because it's just a great way to engage with people, but also to celebrate our 200th newsletter issue, because we started in January of 2009, and we've done one every single month since, except for January 2025. So that, if my math is right, that makes this the 200th one. And so we thought we'd play with that theme a little bit. And we used to have themes on our older newsletters. So I'm gonna kind of show you on our, of course, our website here. To get to all of our older newsletters, you just click on the newsletter button, and you can see all the different years of newsletter issues that are tabbed. Of course, this year, 2025 is the only one with our new kind of format. So our older format was geared largely towards K through 12 teachers, to give them primary source ideas to use in their classrooms, but we also like to widen that audience to other kinds of educators as well. So we always had a theme topic, and so those would, so for instance, when I'm talking about them here in our little blurb, I use the example of historic epidemics. So, we did one, and this was even before COVID. We did a second issue of this one during COVID because it was a lot more topical then. And, these are topics that aren't necessarily related to the curriculum directly, but they definitely are in terms of individual instances. Here we have one on diplomacy and one on rivers. Now, a lot of these were, of course, geared towards Tennessee curriculum standards because that was the scope of our former TPS grant. So that's why you'll see something like Tennessee's cities and their rivers. However, most of these also were not Tennessee specific, or they were a part of the Tennessee curriculum that was not specific to Tennessee history in particular, like the saga of the Colorado River, which has nothing to do with Tennessee. And then, of course, our page 4 was always 4 additional primary sources with little blurbs. So that basically the whole newsletter issue is kind of like a primary source set where you could just go and find images and links, and then links to other types of primary sources as well. And then, of course, we like to have those lesson ideas. So that was, but it wasn't just, we also had, things that were more curriculum focused, like from different chronological eras. Like here's one from the 1970s. This one was a lot of fun for us, even though none of the topics were about fun things that had happened. And for example, the Enlightenment. So we tried to do things for world history teachers as well. Another example, the New Deal, which of course is a nationwide program, but had a lot of specific Tennessee programs, but this one is more kind of generic. And then of course, page 4 always has those additional primary sources. But we also did, we focused on strategies also. So for instance, here's one on teaching historical context, trying to kind of really dig into that critical thinking strategy. Here's one on using prints and photographs. Here's one on working with text-based primary sources, because that is something that a lot of educators struggle to engage their students with. So, excerpting from The Starving Time, which was included in the Tennessee curriculum at this time. But then we also had fun stuff too. So like we did this one on fads in history, which was based on one of those chronicling America topics that they have on their website, so zoot suits and bloomers and minstrel shows. And then sometimes we would do staff favorites, where we would take a former one and update all the links and maybe add some new stuff to it. And then we would also, we did a few of the history in the movies, where we connected movies based on historical plots, and how can you use bits of those with actual primary sources. So basically a lot of variety, and hopefully that will, we realize that they're very hard to find the specific lesson ideas and topics within. So Elizabeth and I are going to be working on a searchable index so that you can more easily find what we have buried in our newsletters from 16, 17 years. So we're working on that, and we will definitely let you know when that's available. Now, we also played with the idea of 200 being, that's a number that people like to celebrate with commemorations and anniversary celebrations. So here are 2 images from the Library of Congress's 200th birthday celebrations that happened in the year 2000. And then over here on the right-hand side, of course, some images from America's bicentennial. Of course, that's gonna, come up again when we're all celebrating the semi-quincentennial next year. Isn't that what it's called? And then we also want to devote at least one page to highlighting projects and partners that we are working with or that we are funding. And so in this particular issue, we are highlighting the Sources Conference that, of course, Scott puts on at UCF, and wanting to solicit participation from teachers across the Southern region. And so if people do want announcements made to get teacher involvement, that is the kind of thing that we want to put in these newsletters. And sometimes we'll be highlighting, like, for example, we'll highlight an ongoing partner. And since Corey is with us, I wanted to show, let's see. So yeah, for example, here we have, we're looking at the crafting curriculum, which Corey had created with the previous TPS grant. And so highlighting that, the good work that has already been done with these types of grants before the Southern region was created. And so that, again, is the kind of thing that we want to highlight, is just basically all the good work that's going on for projects and partners in the TPS Southern region. And you may have seen in these that we also have this little feature called What's Up in the Teachers Network. So I am actually Layla's going to talk about this. And did you want me to open up your tabs? All right, I'm going to stop sharing that screen and share Layla's screen, and I am going to hand it over, and I will take over that.
Perfect.
Right.
Okay, I'm looking for the computer in front of me, but it's actually the TV screen, so that's a little off for me. So on our newsletter, you saw the What's Happening on the Teachers Network, the TPS Teachers Network, and what we wanted to share this week, or this month, excuse me, is an LHI grant project. It was created in partnership with the Library of Congress and Maryland Public Television. If you go to the teachrock.org website, you can then go to, if you scroll up to here, and you'll see a resources tab. So you can go to a resources and then a people's playlist. Okay. And a people's playlist is this LHI project that's funded, like I said, through the Library of Congress and the Maryland Public Television partnership. And this is essentially a turnkey U.S. History 2, course aligned to corresponding standards. So a people's playlist uses music as a primary source, which is really, really interesting to pull that in to engage students in historical inquiry. And you do have to, on this site, you have to log in, you have to create an account, it's free, it's painless. And they also send out really great emails when they publish new units. So the units I'm going to share you, I'll show you, in just a minute. There are eventually going to be 10 of them, but right now there are 4 and then a teacher's guide. So I'm going to take you to the educator's guide first. And this is really helpful. It just kind of walks you through using music as a primary source in the history classroom. And it really goes over the 5 M's of music as a primary source, and you'll see that here. So you have musicians, music media, music materials, music making, music mapping. So you have all of these different pieces, your 5 M's essentially, that you can pull in when teaching. And there are different inquiry methods based on the Library of Congress teaching strategies, an introduction on how to use these sources. It's just a really great teacher's guide if you're starting to dip your toes into this curriculum. The next thing, and again, you need to log in, you need to create a free account and log in, or you're not gonna be able to see this. If you go to their website, you can see this information, but you can't access the lesson plans and the resources unless you create an account. And then I wanted to show y'all next on a people's playlist. Once you log in, you will see this page here talking about Library of Congress based resources and strategies. And then if you're looking for that 5 M's of music, you can also access it here on the main page for the, what is this called? A people's playlist. My brain just went blank, sorry. So they're doing a slow-ish unveiling. So we have 4 different resources right now, or 4 different units, spanning from Reconstruction, like post-war America, to the 1920s and the Great Depression, looking at the Roaring '20s and the Great Depression. So I just wanted to show y'all really quickly something on the American imperialism page here. Did anybody else? I saw this on a Teachers Network post where they were sharing these resources based on their units. So if you also saw this, then you know where they're posting stuff on the network as well. But I think we also linked it in the newsletter as a discussion. So this is Unit 3, and you can see they have the grade range is high school. It takes about 2 weeks. And then you can view more, and it'll tell you not just I think this is right by the standards. Sorry, my screen is like, let me pull that up. That's gonna bother me. Okay. So it gives you an introduction to what this is, and it tells you a breakdown of all the lessons. I think this one is 4 lessons total. And then you can also look at the glossary, which is really helpful. It'll bring you through all the stuff. And these are some words that our students are gonna know, like fake news, clickbait, that kind of thing, and to really relate it to yellow journalism, and then pull in that music aspect as well. So I wanted to show y'all, because this is what our students will probably relate to, the Spanish-American War's impact on Cuba and Puerto Rico, featuring Bad Bunny. So this one's really great because it talks about the role of yellow journalism within the Spanish-American War, and why the U.S. really wanted to have that sphere of influence, and how yellow journalism influenced that at the time, and how it's still continuing to influence things today. So it has images here where you kind of break down fake news, clickbait, and all of these lessons have very similar resources. They have journal articles linked, not journal articles, excuse me, newspaper articles linked. Different, again, definitions. Let's see, a map there as well. And you can see as you go down, you have a preparation, you can do your gallery walk and display. I loved this question because it's a motivational activity instead of like an icebreaker. I feel like I'd be more willing to do a motivational activity in the morning rather than an icebreaker. But it's what is, well, I would, like, no. What is fake news? What might be its purpose? What's clickbait? And I think these are things that our students can totally relate to in this day and age. And then you have just the lesson. It walks you through the different activities, the different gallery walks. And you can take these and chunk them as much as you want to, or use the whole thing for your classroom. Sorry, I didn't do that. But then as you go down, there's just a plethora of information. You have the YouTube video Bad Bunny. You start at minute 11, and then you can set English subtitles and talk about the impact on music today, especially according to this song by Bad Bunny. So just an interesting way to make that connection to students. And anytime we can introduce music into the classroom or other sources, it's so much more relatable to our students. So I did want to tell y'all that they have, sorry, this is my post-it notes. They have, like I said, 4 of the 10 plus the 5 M's module posted, open and ready. The 4 that are currently available are the post-Civil War America, the Gilded Age, and the Progressive Era. The Roaring Twenties, or American Imperialism, which I just showed you a unit from, and the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression. They've all kind of been rolled out on a timeline, not at the same time. So Unit 5 is up next, and it'll be coming out in the spring of 2026, and it's on World War II. So if you have any questions about the curriculum, or you want to get updates on when this new unit is posted and shared, just go to their website and make a free account, and you will get the emails with all of that information. Thanks. Okay. Now I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth. Elizabeth is our new graduate research assistant, and she's going to be sharing with you a lesson today.
Just and click share, and then get to, yeah. Let her have the whole thing.
So like they just said, my name's Elizabeth Webb. I joined the TPS team back in June over the summer. So if you recognize my name, I have posted a little bit in the TPS Teachers Network, mainly in the public history in the Southern region. And so today I'm going to talk about the lesson plan I developed for September about the 200 years since the visit of Marquis de Lafayette in 1824, 1825. We chose this topic because we wanted to continue that theme of commemoration and 200. And also it was something we'd all heard about. I heard about it very recently, and I feel like I've seen it throughout history multiple times since then. So I'm going to try to make this interactive. Has anyone else ever heard about the visit of Lafayette? It's okay if not. I didn't till last semester.
So
Yeah.
Scott
Scott
said
has.
yes.
But
Corey.
Corey agrees with us that we have not.
It's kind of hidden for how major of a moment this was in the early 1800s. And I think it really gets to the core of why he's America's favorite fighting Frenchman. So here's a little background on Marquis de Lafayette. He was born Marie Joseph Paul Yves Roch Gillard du Motier de Lafayette, which is probably why he's just called Marquis de Lafayette. He was born on September 6, 1757, lived till May 20th, 1834. He was commissioned as an officer around the age of 13 in France, and was a major general by 19, mostly due to his father-in-law being his superior. So around 1775, 1776, he started hearing about the revolution that was going on in America and was really inspired of it as representing ideals that he carried himself. So he was really pushing King Louis to send soldiers to America in 1776, and then Britain threatened France, and King Louis dropped the idea, and Lafayette's father-in-law sent him to Britain to meet with King George III and his uncle-in-law. And in returning to France, he actually snuck away and came to America in 1777. And he meets up with George Washington and starts fighting in the Revolutionary War. And in 1778, France gets involved, and he applies for a leave of absence in 1779 and spends a year in France when his son George Washington was born. So he named his first and only son after George Washington. He returned to France when the war was over, and he helped win the Battle of Yorktown, which I also have a lesson plan, which is, I believe, July's lesson plan. But that one's more focused on Hamilton. And then he comes back a little bit in 1784 and 1785 for a visit to America. And then most of the rest of his life he spent in France dealing with the French Revolution from 1787 to 1792. Gets imprisoned by the Austrians and Prussians till 1797, and tries to lay low mostly after that. But in around 1824, he declares his intentions to come back to America and does for a little bit. And then he had a little bit of influence on the July Revolution of 1830 before passing away in 1834. So the primary source on the screen is a French depiction of Lafayette from the conclusion of the 1781 campaign, so right around after the Battle of Yorktown. And this is more specifically about this return. So in February 1824, Congress actually makes a resolution through James Monroe to invite Lafayette to America, citing that the president is requested to communicate to him the assurances of grateful and affectionate attachment still cherished for him by the government and people of the United States. He arrives in New York in August 15th, 1824. And around this time, the House of Representatives displays a commissioned portrait of him, which is on the next slide. And he visited every state at the time. So that was only 24. And cities would throw massive parties and welcoming celebrations. I know the city of Philadelphia spent 2 months planning his return. So this was a huge event. And the two of his most famous stops were visiting the graves of George Washington and Nathanael Greene. He also watched the House of Representatives-elect John Quincy Adams in February 2025, or February of 1825. And then he celebrated his birthday at the White House and returned to France on the USS Brandywine, which was named after him and specifically on how he shed blood in that battle as he was shot in the leg. And so this glove isn't from the Library of Congress, but I wanted to include it because it's how I found out about his trip back to America. So these were made specifically for the celebration. And they say General Lafayette right up below his portrait. And it was really interesting because women would wear these and put out their hands for him to kiss. And he tried to not kiss their hands because he didn't want to kiss a picture of his own face. But he eventually gave in to, due to the manners of the time. And so I do have a fun fact.
That was already fun.
I got another fun fact. It's more of like a quiz. Do y'all know which American building that was very important to the Revolution was preserved in honor of this visit, or started its preservation during his visit? It's okay. I didn't know this till like 2 days ago.
Oh.
Nope. So
Nope.
far nobody knows.
Well, I'll have a picture before I have the name. Does anyone recognize that building? Oh, I clicked on
Hey.
Independence Hall.
You did,
So-
you do now.
Independence Hall was actually almost destroyed in 1816 before the city of Philadelphia bought it from the state, and a part of that 2-month celebration was beginning the restorations of Independence Hall. It was originally called, I think, the Old City Courthouse or Old City Court, and the steeple had fallen in the late 1700s and wasn't rebuilt in time. So Lafayette does not know what it looks like with the modern steeple. So this was a couple of the photos mentioned. So these two in specific. I will say not all the primary sources we use are commemorations of the 1824-1825 visit. Some are of his revolutionary areas, but we still thought it was important to include. So on the left is the portrait that was commissioned by the House of Representatives, and it's still hung in the, what's it called?
Wait, what?
They're the House of Representatives. What's the room they meet?
Chambers?
I think it's the chambers.
That's the
Oh,
No, I had it written down and I forgot about it.
God.
But you can still see it today. And the other is the statue of him in Lafayette Square, right behind the White House, which is also named after him. So, we wanted people to ask questions, which one's more recognizable to the American people? Does that not necessarily matter? But, how is he recognized? The one hung in the chamber is very not as formal as the statue in Lafayette Square. Ask questions about why you think these depictions of him were chosen. And is their location important to their depictions? And you can also ask these more generally about memorials. Why are memorials important? Do we see trends in memorial styles, like between statues and paintings, and even gloves? And why do you think memorial trends shift? Or, how do these make people see themselves and identify with Lafayette? And you can also do these with documents. So the one on the left is from an address that FDR gave for the 100 years of his death. So in 1934. It's really interesting. On the little photocopy I have, he talks about sending Americans to World War I to, repay the debt that Lafayette gave. And then the second is a speech on behalf of a Senate resolution. And it happened in 2002. And it was actually when America gave Lafayette citizenship. So he had honorary citizenship back from the Revolutionary War, but citizenship was determined by states. So he didn't have, a full American citizenship. And I wanted to read a little part of this because I thought it was really important to why Lafayette still matters. So he ends his speech by saying, "Mr. Speaker, in light of the events of September 11th, stories of personal sacrifice, bravery, and commitment take on a new meaning and greater importance for all Americans. The story of General Lafayette is one, in particular, that inspires us to continue, in the face of adversity, to fearlessly protect our nation's principles and to advance them globally. In Lafayette's words, humanity has won its battle, liberty now has a country." So, it just goes further to show that ideas of him and the revolutionary aren't lost throughout time. And I think it's really interesting to compare these two and, how they fit into the American narrative at the time they were presented. You can also do it with maps. So this is a map of the town of Fayetteville in North Carolina from 1822. So this is the first and only town that is named after Lafayette that he actually visited. And they had a huge celebration throughout the reign for him. And there's many cities in America named after Lafayette. And Lafayette.
I was gonna ask, how do people pronounce that depending on where they're from?
But why do we name towns after people? And I think this one's a really great case example because people from Fayetteville, North Carolina moved to Fayetteville, Tennessee and named Fayetteville, Tennessee after the city in North Carolina. Now I actually have family in Fayetteville, Tennessee. And then the people in Tennessee moved to Arkansas and named it Fayetteville. So how do commemorations, just stop at people? How do they react to time and space? And I also want to do a more local celebration. So on the left is a mural that was painted in 1997 in the towns of Maysville, Kentucky. And then the picture on the right is a widespread shot of it there. It's painted on the Ohio River flood wall. And as a moment in 1997, they decided to paint murals dedicated to momentous occasions in the town's history. So, how is something from 1825 still relevant to this town in 1997? It's also, people still have Lafayette days based on the visit in 1825. I think the French American Alliance has it as like a major day to celebrate the French and American Alliance. I think it was New Hampshire that, that's still a part of like their town celebration. There were also nationwide celebrations for Lafayette's 200th visit, put on by the Friends of Lafayette, and I believe the Sons and Daughters of the American Revolution. Yeah. And I think a little bit of help from the 250 celebrations. So I don't think there's many more because he left September 9th. So that was earlier this week. But how, a national movement becomes small and, a national memorial has smaller memorials attached to it. And then also you could do public art as a memorial opportunity, going from physical paintings that, are hard to see to like open paintings. So I don't know if you noticed, but Lafayette in this depiction looks very similar to the House of Representatives painting of him. And that's because people wanted to paint him, but they couldn't get time to see him. So they actually went to the Capitol to recreate the painting from the House of Representatives. And it was copied throughout. And there's also acting. So on the picture on the left is from 1928 in Annapolis, Maryland. I don't know if you can see Lafayette, if you're wanting to take a guess to where he is in this photo. Yeah, there he is. He's right in the middle, kissing the hand. Luckily, this is celebrating a revolutionary monument of him, so he doesn't have to kiss his own face. And then the one on the right is, of course, Daveed Diggs as him from the Hamilton musical, which is how I was really introduced to him. So both of these show how do modern people depict people in the past. And, it can be like a semblance of, is it accurate depictions? I can't really say for either of these, but, this is the one on the left is, a very colonial depiction, it brings back colonial memories. And, modern depictions can also have more effects on languages. I don't know when this really stopped, but when Lafayette was still alive, he was called General Lafayette because that was his American title. They didn't call him Marquis. That's a much more modern. So, is that an impact from the Hamilton musical because he's exclusively referred to as Marquis de Lafayette? So I think there's a lot you could do with memorials and different depictions and ways we memorialize people and how we choose to do it. So that's all I have for the PowerPoint. Is there any questions?
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I know I learned a lot when she was working on this, and we hope that you did too. And so now you can meet her in the virtual face, but she does post on, as she said, the TPS Teachers Network, and she's there to kind of interact with different ideas. And so we want to make sure that we maintain a portion of our newsletter to offer lesson ideas to classroom educators, because that's kind of what we've been doing for so long, and we've already built a really solid network of educators that have been receiving our newsletters for years. And so we really believe in continuing that part of our mission to a smaller degree, of course, as we broaden out and work on the Southern Region subawards and projects and let you all do that work of reaching out to teachers too. But you'll see that we're going to continue to include lesson ideas on a more limited basis in our newsletters going forward. And so they may not be on specific, it may just be on random topics, but if you have any kind of suggestions or things that you would like to see us including in our newsletters, or ideas for how we might be able to expand and bring back that fourth page, then you guys know how to email us and get in contact with us, or you can just drop things in the chat. I wanted to take a few minutes before we begin our closing segment to show you another way that we're trying to reach out to directly to educators of all kind, whether that's people who are educating educators, such as many of you, or people who are educating students straight in the classroom. And that is through our professional development videos, and which one of
Go to the bottom.
Google Chrome. Okay, there it is. Okay, so here we are back in our newsletter issue. So yes, the page 3 of the newsletter, this is an extended lesson idea. Sometimes they're only half a page, but this one, Elizabeth just came up with so many ideas and so much information. So there's on page 3. So I am going to go to our website for a second, and I'm just going to type in library. Oh, it's going to come up already. Fantastic. So on our website, excuse me, I have to move this box. We have a professional development tab, and this is where you can link to our How to Webinars playlist. And I know some of you have already heard about these, and so you're going to be hearing about them more because we are soliciting feedback about them and just starting to really kind of build things to go with them. We do have a little survey that will take you to a Google form if you want to kind of vote for the ones you want to see us do next. This is a little out of date because I have done a couple of these already in direct response to some of the early voting from classroom teachers that we piloted at the end of summer. But so here is our playlist, and I'm really sorry that it's a bunch of shots of me in my dining room, but so all these videos, we're trying to make them average length of under 15 minutes. I apologize that the latest one is the longest because it's the one that I get the nerdiest about, how to read old manuscripts. That's just kind of something that's near and dear to my heart. And surprisingly, a lot of teachers actually wanted to see that. So just some tips and tricks. Finding different formats of primary sources, and then also we're going to be introducing ones that are more analysis based and strategy based. Citing primary sources. There's a few nuts and bolts ones as well, such as how to make an album in the TPS Teachers Network, in which I'm actually creating an album in real time that you can go to the network and add to whenever you want. And then you can see that some of them say for your classroom and some of them say for your museum/historic site. And that's because we're really trying to broaden our audience to appeal to people who work with education in public history settings. We, of course, are in a public history setting. We are at the Center for Historic Preservation at MTSU, and Elizabeth is one of our public history graduate students, and so is Ashley. So we are working with people in those settings all the time, and always mindful there's so many ways that those types of uses of primary sources really overlap with what teachers are already doing in the classroom. And so it's really great because then students can go to sites and ask the same questions of the things that they see in their museums or archives or that kind of thing. And so we really want to expand into that audience a bit more by telling them that we're talking to them too, and not just people who teach at the K-12 level. So if you have any kinds of feedback, we do post these on the network on the TPS Southern Region group. I know sometimes there's so much going on there that gets buried really fast, and we don't always have time to watch things and then submit feedback. But even if you're weeks and weeks after original posting, we still would love to hear if you had any kinds of ideas for what would be a good direction. But one direction that we are currently pursuing is that Layla and I are building out a more long form professional development kind of course to go along with it, where we're using these videos to train people on the spot, interact with them, and then have them create things using the tips that they learned in these videos, and then share those in a more closed kind of professional development setting, such as a closed group on the TPS network or something like that. And that way we can create a little bit of a curriculum series done asynchronously that either subawardees can participate in, or if you're working with, educators, they can participate in. And we're just, so we're a little bit late to that game because we only started up this southern region earlier this year, but we are working on building that out. So again, I know that we keep asking for your feedback all over this particular webinar, but that's basically because we are just really still in a little bit of transition here, but we're just so happy to be exploring the regional partners and being able to reach out across more than just the state of Tennessee and see all the great work that y'all are doing. And we really just want our efforts to support your efforts. And so I am going to turn it back to Kira, and she has some closing up to do.
Yeah, so a couple things. So we've mentioned the TPS Teachers Network a few times. And for those of you who have been in the TPS world for a while, you know what that is. But for some of our educators who maybe have heard it mentioned but haven't had a chance to see it, I thought I might take just a second to pull it up and show you what that looks like. So if you go to tpsteachersnetwork.org, this is what that looks like. And if I move that, you can easily, whoops, let's not log in. Click join the network if you don't already have an account. It is free. You just simply, again, set up your account. And then once you do, you can get access to all of the fantastic resources, groups, conversations, albums, videos, again, all the great things that is available through the TPS Teachers Network. So it is not just for folks who are part of, grant projects, either as people who are actually executing the projects or applying for projects, but it's actually for anyone who has using primary sources from the Library of Congress. So again, it's a fantastic resource. I encourage you to join and take a look at it if you haven't already done so. And so as I mentioned at the beginning, we will be posting a link to the video for this resource there in our album for newsletters and digging in on the TPS Southern Region group. So that'll be a place that you can always go and kind of, again, find, for example, access to Elizabeth's PowerPoint if you would like to get a chance to look at those sources a little bit more, or if you want to adapt that PowerPoint and use it in your own settings. I'm sure Elizabeth wouldn't mind. So be sure to check that out. The other thing that you can do, well, if I can find my cursor, well, cursor. Oh, Zoom decided it did not like me doing that for some reason, so let's try again. Sorry, guys. All right, so all right. So feedback, again, for those of you interested in receiving PD credit for today's session, you can do that. We do have a brief survey. You could either use the QR code or we'll drop that link in the chat box. We do send out certificates once a week for those who view these. And we are always looking for feedback for topics that you would like to see us discuss in future episodes. And like Stacy said, we are kind of evolving what this webinar looks like each month. So we'd particularly like your feedback on what you would like to see as we continue to think about the best use of this time when we meet each month. Thank you guys again so much for joining us. We hope that you will come back and join us again next month. We will be meeting on Thursday, October the 9th at 4 p.m. You can use that same registration form that you used today to register for next month, and then we'll send out a link a couple of days in advance. If you have questions, thoughts, please feel free to reach out to us. As many of you guys know, we love to chat with folks. So, email us, give us a call. We are here to be a resource for you. We will stick around for just a few minutes if anybody has any questions, but that will conclude our recording for today. So thanks, guys.
Okay, that's what they mean when they say that there's a new function to these React features.
And I think you can do
Okay.
it with your hands. Like on your iPhone, you can make it recognize hands.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks, Celine. Thanks, everybody.